Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Sphere 24 demo stage. How many of you during last 3 months has been worried about identity theft? Quite a few people. But hey, not to worry, we got this. We are super thrilled to have each and every one of you here today when we start our XDR journey. We are launching the identity security for Entra ID. For those who don't know me, my name is Pilvi Tunturi, and I have had the privilege to lead this team behind this groundbreaking new product. With me on the stage here, I have some brilliant mind who has poured his expertise and dedications into creating this groundbreaking new product. Allow me to introduce Mika Arasola, our XDR product director, whose expertise has been super invaluable throughout the whole development process. With XDR, it's no longer about the detection capabilities only. It's more and more about the process content. And process content means the day in the life of our partners and customers. How does the work look like? How does the day look like? We don't need more alerts. We need relevant, contextual, and actionable data. Today, we're going to talk about the XDR. We're going to talk about what identity and digital identity means for us. And we are going to go very deep into what does the identity attacks look like. So Mika, why don't you take it away, please?
Thank you. So one of the nice things of having world-class incident response services and award-winning MDR service is that it works like a magnifying glass, allowing us to see what kind of emerging threats there are and prototype new detections quite quickly. And we've been seeing quite an increase in attacks targeting identity. So both in the incident response side and also in the MDR, it's been increasing a lot recently. And our expectation is that this trend will continue. So basically, when you look at the newspaper headlines, you see a lot of ransomware actors and like familiar names, notable names. But one part that you don't maybe see so often, or it's not so obvious, is that in a lot of attacks, it's not one party who does the whole attack. It's actually small, different groups with different expertise. So you have groups that are just scanning the internet, looking for leaked identities, trying to steal credentials, trying to find any way through vulnerabilities to get their foot between the wall or the door. And once they have it there, they're trying to understand, where am I? They won't even know, what is this company? Can I get further? What do I see here? Try to get a foothold. And when they have that, they go to the black market and they sell that access to those ransomware groups who come in and do their thing. So when we say that the attacks are increasing, we also expect that this trend will continue because these groups are all building their own tooling, their own expertise. And until companies become better at defending, it means it's easy prey and becoming easier while the tools develop. So for us, identity security then, of course, is the tool that will help protect against those users. So when we say identity, can you explain what we mean by identity?
Yes, thank you. So at WithSecure, we talk about the digital identities. It's almost like your online passport. You use that to verify and prove who you are in the internet. Like normal passport, you have information about you. Also, digital identity has information about you. It's by minimum an email address. It can be a username, password, even biometric data like fingerprints. Identity and access management solutions such as Microsoft Entra ID, they sit between the third-party services, cloud services, and of course the devices that you use to access them. There might not be even a VPN. They are in the public internet accessible there through your own devices. The threats against these are quite wide. It's about credential theft, unauthorized access, even insider threats, and they can lead into the data breaches, data losses, and malware and ransomware installation. So Mika, why don't you tell more about attacks?
Sure. So another thing we've learned, especially as part of incident response, is that when we talk of multiple groups working together to make the attack, that's an opportunity for defenders because those groups are not very fast. So if somebody has made a product out of getting initial access into a company, they're very careful when they are probing and doing these initial attacks. They don't want to be triggering any alerts because that would soil their product and they'd have nothing to sell. It takes time. So our statistics say that on average, it takes about 72 hours from the moment when somebody first accesses the network to the point where they reach the final goal, which would be installing ransomware, having stolen the data that they could use to extort the customers, and so on. If we look at an example attack, so here we have an attack path where you have a user and the user falls prey to a phishing attack. On the top line, you have this traditional malware gets installed on the device, and this is something that's handled quite well with EPP and EDR. On the bottom row, you have the part of the identity. So the user falls prey, enters his credentials somewhere, and now the attacker has them. And the attacker will try to log on to the Entra ID. There's many ways to detect that. It might be a strange country. It might be using a protocol that the company is not normally using. So identity security will do all of that. After they get access, they'll be logging into Entra ID. They'll be trying to do many ways to kind of get further in, if possible, trying to change conditional access settings, trying to install Entra ID applications that give them extra privileges, and then their goal will be done. And so the goal of identity security and XDR in general is to expand the scope of what you see. Because if you are the defender and you have an attack ongoing, but you don't have the coverage for it, then the question is, when will you see that attack? Is it when somebody sends you an extortion letter telling you that they have the data? Or is it at the moment when the ransomware is installed on the devices? Because there's the alternative of noticing it earlier, being able to react earlier before it reaches that stage. Identity security will be, or is, integrated into elements in a familiar way. So if you've been using EDR, it goes into the same broad context detection views. The layout is slightly different because it's showing you a step of actions that an administrator has performed. In this case, it's beyond the initial access phase. So the attacker has been modifying conditional access settings, modifying logging configuration to hide the tracks, and so on. So with identity security, you can be alerted maybe before these steps, or at least during these steps when they're still building the attack. And we're hoping it's very intuitive for all of the existing users, so easy to use. Maybe, Pilvi, you can tell how it works then under the bonnet.
Yes. So basically, with the very, very simple one-time configuration in the Element Security Center, we are able to start ingesting your Entra ID logs. And those logs will be sent through our detection pipelines. It's the same detection pipelines that we have for our EDRs, and we are there adding our secret source. And that source consists of AI, of course, and then, of course, rule-based detections. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because it's a secret for a reason. Once found, then they will be visible in the broad context detection views in our Element Security Center. We are able to provide you with the remediation guidance so that it's easy to then, in the very stressful situation of an investigation and attack, know what to do, basically. All of this works very closely with our co-security services, so you can, for example, escalate things to our incident response, or you can have an incident response retainer. So how is it now? How many of you is now more worried about identity theft? Good.
Good. So it seems everyone is ready to buy it then. Identity security is now in early access in Elements, but it's not a new service for us. So for over a year, we've been offering cloud detection and response to our Countercept MDR customers using the same technology. So what's new is the integration into Elements. We have good detection coverage that we're, of course, working all the time to extend further. But we're very ready to onboard customers, and we've done a very aggressive early access pricing campaign. So we're targeting it mainly at EDR customers, and for a bundle of identity security and EDR, it only adds about 15% on top of the EDR cost. So for example, if your yearly EDR cost is about 1,000 euros, it will be 1,150 euros for the total bundle. Our sales has been complaining that this is way too cheap, but take the opportunity while it's there. On top of that, we're giving 10 first offers a free WithSecure hoodie. So be fast. It's licensed based on the number of users. So looking at the number of users in Entra ID, you can estimate then how that will be. After the presentation, so now, we're going to be heading to the XDR booth. If you haven't been there, we have a video demoing real-world attacks, showing an example of what type of attacks are out there. And we have it in the portal, so you can see how it looks in practice. So please come and join us and ask any more questions that you have.
Thank you, everyone, for your attention. And we hope you liked it. We are super proud of this new product, so hope to see so many of you at the booth after this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Okay.
Thank you, Mika and Pilvi. Any questions from the audience?
Is there any AI model that's looking at the MFA side of the identity, when you capture the identity and the two-factor authentication goes through, to see any suspicious behavior on that side as well?
The most common attacks around that scenario are actually using authentication protocols that bypass MFA. So that is a very common attack, actually. And even if you've configured Entra to require multi-factor authentications, unless you have understood how to configure it to disable all of these other authentication mechanisms, then it might still be possible to do a login. We have detections around that, and we're currently working also on having better understanding of your conditional access policies to see, for example, that do you have some offices where you don't require MFA, and further understanding of that so we can take them into consideration there. The models look at users and see what countries do the users usually log in from and what protocols do they usually use. And it looks at the company level also to understand on a company level what locations do the employees use and what protocols is the company using, and it will change the severity of the findings based on anomalous events which are not only risky, but they are also unusual for this company. So there's a learning period, of course, in the beginning then, similar to EDR, where the model is learning.
And maybe to add also is that we have our WithIntel booth over there, and if you have any more questions about the detections, those people are very well equipped to answer as well.
Yeah, even better than me.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Do you have a question? Still here.
Sorry?
There was a question still, I think.
One short question, maybe.
Sorry.
Thank you. Is it possible to do response actions within the platform? Let's say disable a user.
Disabling a user is coming, so it's on our roadmap. It's not there right now, but it should be. I'm not sure if it's Q3, which is starting now in June, or if it's going to be Q4, but I think the goal is to do that in Q3. So disabling user is the first response action that will be coming.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And as said, if you want to ask more questions, move to the extended detection and response and identity security booth. And if you want to create some awareness among your clients or internally, maybe also good to move to the attack simulation game booth, because we use some gamification to get everything, more insights for your internal people and clients as well, also related to this topic.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then the last